Alright, so today we're going to be fixing an issue that has been going on for the PSP. So here is the last known working version of a Python interpreter on the PSP. It's Stackless Python 2.5, and it's ported to the PSP, and it's pretty old. No one's touched it in 15, 16 years. So you can go ahead and start assuming a couple things here. It's also important to note that Python 2.5 was released on September 19th, 2006. So it's quite out of date. So instead, what I went ahead and did was I went and compiled Pocket PY with the PSP. Now, Pocket PY is basically a lightweight Python virtual machine. It's written in C++17. But the issue still is that there's actually no interpreter around it. It is its own interpreter in a way, but it can't do any of the useful things that you would expect out of something like Lua++ or something like that, or Lua Player Plus, whatever it's called. It's actually starting to become an issue with Lua as well, where we probably need a new Lua interpreter at some point, since I'm not even sure if Lua Player Plus compiles. I know it was really sketchy towards the end, whether it did or did not work. So yeah, we probably should do that at some point too. So I went ahead and made this testing repository, where I was able to go ahead and actually run some Python code on the PSP itself, and I'm going to be exploring creating a Python interpreter. It's now going to be part of the PSP packages, so you can just do PSP Pacman, and you can install Pocket Python in order to run that. And by the time this video is up, that probably will already be handled. So let's go ahead and dive into some of this. So let me go ahead and just comment and push the existing code here. Um, so I'm going to be doing some editing here, and pretty much I have the very basics of the platform set up. What I do need to do is do a hashtag include, and then I need to do sorry, pocket py.h in order to get some of our files here. So now that we have pocket py included, what we can do is we're going to end up creating a VM. So auto VM equals pkpy colon VM, and it has to be new. Now I have no clue if the OS features, if enable OS is set to true, will actually work. So that's kind of a question mark on my mind. To actually go ahead and read and run some code, let's go ahead and create some sort of test file. So we'll call it source.py or test.py. Or script. Script.py is probably the best way to do that. Script.python. And so far we'll just do print and hello world. And we don't need a semicolon. Unresolved reference to print. I don't think that's true. We need to configure a Python interpreter. I don't think I have Python even installed. So let me do that. Apt-get install Python. Python 3. Python 3 is already installed. I don't know what error you are complaining about, but oh well, it'll work. I don't really care. Let's go ahead and then we have to create a method here to auto read file to string, and then what we're going to do is this will output standard string, which means I have to include string, and I'm going to include ifstream or fstream, and I'll use string stream. So what I want to do, I'll need a path variable, so standard string path. And then what we'll do here is that we'll do standard fstream file in. Going to be the path. File not open, return that. Otherwise, we'll do a stream, which is the buffer, and then the buffer will take the input and then reads out the string. So now we have a way to read file to the path. Make sure that this is a const std reference to avoid the copy, and then we'll do auto code is read file to string, and it's going to be the script.py. If code empty, return exit failure. Otherwise, return exit success. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do VM execute. And then it's going to execute the code. And this will be considered the script.py file. And then we'll do execute mode. And that will run the VM. Done, we'll delete the VM. And then we can do while true and SCE wait. SCE display wait view blank start. Which means that we have to include PSP display to do that. Endless loop. Well, it's supposed to be an endless loop. Return exit success is still needed. This to me looks good. So now that we have this, what we can do is we can run the build, which builds our application, then run it on the PSP. It resets, and the reason it resets, and I could probably show that if I did, instead of return here, do throw standard runtime error and then fail to open file. If I did that, then I run it, terminate, fail to open file, script.py. And what I can do is I could actually surround everything here with a try catch. So we could do try and catch, oops, an exception. It's really a pretty good idea. And then wait for, yeah, this is a very good suggestion from Copilot here. It doesn't know where that file is, it's PSP kernel. And now it will display on the screen the exception, and we'll also want to do the inertia error exception. That way we can, even though I have my PSP physically linked here, you can see we can see it on the terminal as well. Exception failed to open file script.py, and that happens, and then it resets PSP link. The other thing I can do for the exception here is do PSP debug screen, set color, set text color to be 0xFF. This is red, basically. This is the terminal color for red. And now that I have that set up, if any exceptions occur at all during the application, what will happen is now it prints it out in red. Exception failed to open file. And that seems to be pretty good for that. And then the actual thing that I have to do is copy the file into here. So now that we copied the file over, if I run it, it actually runs and prints out hello world, and then it infinitely loops. Now, the issue though is that that hello world doesn't actually go to the screen, it only goes to standard output. So in order to hook onto that, there's actually an easy way of doing this from the VM side of things. What you can do is you can do VM standard output is equal to, and this is a function, so you're gonna have to do this, and then it's VM pointer VM comma was this constant string, and I'm not sure if it's a using string, so I can't be quite sure. And I think these are both PKPY. uses VM and string. And now that you have a string, what you can do, we're going to use the unused VM. So the VM is actually used here. Set the color to white, and then we debug screen printf the string. And because of this C string method, I think this is actually just a standard string. It's not, so never mind. We're going to keep it that way. So that's standard out, and then the other one would be standard error. So we can do that. And pkpy VM pointer VM const pkpy string and s and pk unused and red and the error. So let's actually introduce intentional error by trying to run something that doesn't exist. Lolcat. This is an error. And we will see that if I copy this over now and okay, and overwrite, and then I remake, and then I build and run, we get two notifications. We get hello, and then we get trace back the error. That didn't print out to the PSP though, so I have to do that really quick. Or sorry, that didn't print out to the console. So to print out to the console, standard cout, then that, and then standard error, and then that. And that way we now have a way of setting the VM standard outputs. Instead, we're going to go ahead and go here, auto setup VM output as being pkpy VM pointer, and that will be a VM, and it's automatically set to void, and we're just going to copy and paste this code and put it into here, and then we're just going to call setup VM output on the VM. And then our code string should be read in here. So now that that's done, small vector, and then we run here. It says hello world, and does trace back file script py, line 2, lolcat, this is an error, name lolcat is not defined. And then once we get here, this isn't actually throwing an exception. Here, we'll do a throw standard runtime error with the string s, and that has to be converted to const char. So now we have standard out, standard error, and then we have runtime error gets triggered, and that will throw the exception out into here. That actually does a double print. Not actually, no. This is not true. This shouldn't actually throw an error. Technically, um, so printing out the standard error can be sometimes a standard practice. So you don't want any error to be just thrown like that. I wonder if there would be a way. Let's see. That we could potentially handle this. So whenever there is a traceback, I wonder if the VM actually does set anything internally. So trace or nope, there's the last exception. So what ends up happening is that execute runs. And then it gets stuck in executing because it finds an error, but then nothing can happen. So that's a small issue. I don't know exactly how it should be handled. I don't think it's a good idea just to say that anything printed to error. Although we are kind of building our own like box here, so throwing runtime error for Python error might be a good idea here. So if I go ahead and just try rebuilding this real quick. This goes name error, localhost not defined, exception, Python error, and then it resets. It's a solution. Um, I'm not completely happy with it, but it works for now. So we have standard output working here now. So we also have this code stuff that might want to be put as. This should probably be in runtime exception, and maybe it should be handled by read file to string. So if buffer string length or string empty, rather, you could do files empty. And that way we can get rid of that code. So this code can actually even be condensed to just read that, but I actually think this is fine. Call it source code too. Call it script py, delete the VM, run forever. And because it's running forever, you can just use and the debug screen callback's been set up. We don't have to really worry. Standard Sierra exception e what, and then yeah, this is fine. So now that we have everything set up, I guess we can start working on trying to make a basic module. And so to add extra code, what we can do is we can create a module. So what we do is we do, well, before we actually run it. So this would be auto, and then we would call this PSP module maybe, and it's equal to VM new module, and it's called PSP. And this new PSP module will be able to contain all of the VM stuff that we'll need. So we'll create a method here, and we'll call setup VM PSP module, and we'll say pkpy VM we'll need, and we'll also need the pkpy object pointer to the module or mod. That works. And then so now we can actually do setup VM PSP module and then VM comma new VM new module for the PSP stuff. And what we could do, that's a good example of something that's pretty atomic on the PSP that doesn't require any other subsystem. Maybe we could do set text color or something like that. Yeah, maybe we could do that. So we'll go ahead and create a method here, and it will just be set up for PSP underscore text color, and it takes an integer as an input. So the integer will be just the color, and we do the debug screen, and then setup VM PSP module will be module, or actually no, VM bind to the module. And then we have to specify the method, so text color, and then int, and returns. Oops, sorry. This needs to be text color, and then it takes in color as an integer, and it outputs void, and then PSP text color is going to be used, but it needs to be actually a special. We have to make a binding here, so VM pointer VM args view args, and this is both prefixed by the pkpy. and pkpy. So we have args view, and then now we have a lambda. We can unuse the VM and args0. What we can actually do is there's a thing here called cast, and we do cast. It has to be cast as a I32 or U32, and we take the arg0, and then whoops. And then you have to do a return, so this is like, it's like VM none or something. VM none. Is it not VM none? Let me check that really quick on the pocketpy.dev. There's calling functions or binding native functions. How do you, it should, if there is no value, return VM none. Oh, so, whoops, it's VM none. None? None. There we go. And now it returns a py object, and it calls the cast function to change the color for the PSP debug screen set text color. So now if I do remove that, import, I don't even need to do import. I think I can just do PSP dot, it's not that color, but was it? It's PSP text color. So it's called text underscore color. 0x, so ff 00 ff 00, make it green. And then we'll copy over that. We'll overwrite it. We will build it. There's an error. PyCast is not declared. Do you mean to use pkpycast? Yeah, so I guess I'll have to use using namespace pkpy. And then so using pkpy we can just do this. That way we can natively just use the cast and VM stuff. So, I mean that's fine. It's, of course that doesn't work. And then run pspython. Says invalid number literal. Does Python have a special hex too? That's kind of weird. Invalid number literal. Maybe okay, we can fix this by adding another function, right? Auto make color, and that is the way to make a color. So now we can bind a VM bind mod comma make color, and then RGBA as an int, and this will be returning var make color like that, and then now I can change the script to do psp.make color, and then 2.50 2.50, that's pink, and then do copy paste py overwrite, and wait, this is gonna, it doesn't, yeah, it does not know. Oh, PSP is not, does it import PSP and then do that? Hold on. Too many arguments to make color? Excuse me? RGB. Oh. Yeah. RGB. That's right. And then this. And it types out hello world. But it didn't set it the right way. I think the order is reversed here, so I think it's actually return with FF 0. Yeah, like that. I think that's the correct order. So we can try that again. That didn't work either. Um, let's see. Why does that happen? And that. Uh-huh. Color is equal to this. Print. We can print the color. Let's see. Why is this actually having an issue? Of course. I modified this, but I need to modify this. And this needs to include an import PSP statement. And then paste that. And then make sure that that's okay. Those my arguments. And then PSP text color is color. That, that, then make, and then run. So negative 65281. Uh, oh! The reason um is because it's doing the set text color before it, and we don't need to technically do that. That's the reason why. That was a silly bug. So it probably worked the entire time. Yep, that's the right color. Wow, okay. So that worked fine. I just didn't realize. Okay, okay. So that was working the entire time. And that's fun. But there we go. So PSP text color, make color, runs that, and then now it runs correctly. Then yeah. Okay, so that's an example of adding something to the VM. Now there's a whole lot more that we can do. What I want to see is, can I add a constant, for example, can I add a constant color to this? So I could add all 16 VGA colors, for example. Okay. Let's see. So we can bind things. I wonder if we can add, so module. So I wonder if we do VM. So there's a bunch of binds. There's binding built-in functions, structures, default constructors, methods. Um, yeah, so one way I could do this, actually, I want to try this. It might be better. VM, and then you do bind, and then you do bind method. And then it's the argument count, so this case is 4. And then it needs either a string type or an object. So I'm going to do an object. I'm going to do make color and then have that be the native. If I remove this, and then I build and run this, it should still also work. Oops. Undefined reference to something. VM bind method. Uh, okay. That's interesting. It says native func fn argc native func, and it's going to do a call, and then I don't have the code for that. But that's one way to do it. I'm sure that there's. Oh, it's not bind method, it's bind function. Wait, is that real? That. Oh. Oh, well, no, you still get the issue. Darn. There's also a built in function, which is also not very clear, but obviously it wouldn't require a mod, I think. This still crashes, so I guess we have to still bind it this way. Okay, if that's the only way to do that, VM bind. Can't really bind a variable. I know you can create. So there is the ability to create objects. Can you define a global inside of an object? So apparently it's possible. I just need to find the right functions or ways to do this. So if I know that this is a py object, so mod, interesting. So it has attributes. What is an attribute? is a name dictionary. So attrib contains arrays, items, items and keys. And then you can try and set one. So, try set maybe. And then we need a key, text color black, and that would be this, right? Maybe black is a terrible example. Let's do gray. Text color gray, right? And then attributes text color gray, add. Um, and then we could do PSP dot text color gray or something like that. And then we can copy this script over. And then try to run that. It seems like that'll work. Module has no attribute text color gray, so it doesn't set the attribute correctly. So I wonder if there's a way to do. Let's see. So it's modules attrib this is wrong. That's the cycle. Attrib dot set. Okay. And then this would be text color gray. And then make color. But this would be SFR. Okay, that theoretically works based on their own example. And it does work. Okay, so this is how we add a variable. And this is how I add a function. Okay, so now I can create two helper functions here. So auto setup VM create variable, or to be just called create variable maybe. So that's a little bit too much of a name. pk py VM pointer VM, and then we would need the const std string and name, and then we also need the object value, and then we would also need to know the module. Actually, we don't need the VM, we just need the module, right? So actually, py object pointer mod, and then using namespace pkpy mod uh, attribute set name value. And then apparently name can't be set so like that, so you have to do like C-string. That works. So then that creates a variable, so then I can do something like I could technically just not care what it is. What does var actually do? Does py var vm comma x. And what does py var do? Well, not quite sure, but py var apparently wraps whatever you put in. So we could do a template type name t, and then we just have a t value, and we just do var wrap the value. And then we do need, if we are calling var, we do need VM. So VM mod, and this should work. Yeah, it does. Okay, so then we have t values to create value. So then we could do create variable, VM mod text color black, and then we don't need the var anymore. We just need make color because that's equivalent of setting it. So theoretically, I can just do make change 25 and then run this. But now it says module has no attribute text color gray. Oh. Text color gray needs to exist like that. Then make change 25. Then run that. And now that works correctly as well. So now we have a way of easily creating variables. Then we can do a create function one as well, where it's VM mod, and then it will just be string and I don't know layout maybe, and then the pk py c function or func. What even is it? Native func c. And then that should work. So then we could do create func. So VM mod make color r int g int b int and then int then VM pointer VM comma and do it like that. And the same thing could happen for text color. Create func VM mod PSP text color. Get rid of that. And now we have this way of creating it. And what we can do to make this even crazier is that we could do. Well, we could actually just wrap this into a class. Um, and call it like module builder. So maybe I'll do that. Yeah, that might be cool. Class. Uh, it can be a struct, and we'll call it module builder. Oops. And then have a pk py colon VM pointer VM and a pk py object mod. And then it would have a way of initializing it, and then we could actually have variable and function. And then we can get rid of this. Oh boy. Now we could do module builder, taking in VM and mod. No longer need that. And then we could just do builder var text color gray, and then make color. Or it's not even there, it's just dot var. Oh, that's fun. And then builder of create func, it's just builder.func. Uh, using a namespace, PKPY is still required. Whoops. Didn't think about that real for a second there. Builder function. Then does this. And now we have a let me define in the result type of a function. Oops. Like that. There you go. Now we have an even crazier way of doing that. Did I mess this up again? Text color gray. Paint color. Wait, what? Type module has no attribute text underscore color. Oops. Yep, and then that one worked too. Might also want to print out a message real quick. And then just say program completed. And then text color as being green. And that should help. Just to have a visual reference that program completed. Yep, that worked. So now we have our method set. Cool. Yep, there we go. Everything works. So now we have a pretty easy way of building up our module. And we can get started on building an actual interpreter later.